that reveal a truly good woman. Here's something that might surprise you. Most people spend years, sometimes decades, in the wrong relationships. Not because they're foolish, not because they weren't trying, but because they never learned what to actually look for. And according to psychological research, the qualities that matter most aren't the ones most people are searching for. They're quieter, deeper, and far more predictive of long-term happiness than looks, charm, or chemistry. So today, I'm going to walk you through 5 science-backed psychological traits that genuinely reveal a good woman, not based on opinion, not based on cultural expectations, based on what behavioral science and relationship psychology actually tell us about character, emotional health, and the kind of person who makes a genuinely positive presence in your life. Stay with me through all 5 because the last one is the one most people completely overlook. Topic introduction. Let's start with some context because this matters. According to the American Psychological Association, approximately 40 to 50% of marriages in the United States end in divorce, and survey data consistently shows that one of the leading causes isn't infidelity or finances, it's incompatibility in core values and emotional responsiveness. In other words, people chose partners without really understanding who those partners were at a psychological level. And here's the thing that most people get wrong early on. They focus on surface-level traits, how someone looks, how much fun they are to be around, how attracted they feel in the first few months. What the research actually tells us is that those things fade. What stays, what determines whether a relationship enriches your life or drains it, is psychological character. So what does psychology say we should actually be looking for? Trait 1. The first trait is emotional regulation. This is one of the most important and most underappreciated psychological traits a person can have. Emotional regulation refers to a person's ability to manage their own emotional responses, especially in stressful or frustrating situations, without becoming destructive, volatile, or manipulative. Think of it like this. Imagine your nervous system is a thermostat. Some people have a thermostat that's finely calibrated. It adjusts, it balances, it returns to a stable temperature even when external conditions change. Other people have a thermostat that swings wildly, and when that happens, everyone around them feels it. Research published in the Journal of Family Psychology found that emotional regulation capacity is strongly linked to relationship satisfaction and stability over time. Partners with poor emotional regulation tend to engage in what psychologists call flooding, where they become so overwhelmed by emotion that rational communication shuts down entirely. Now, and this is important, emotional regulation does not mean suppressing feelings. It doesn't mean being cold or emotionally unavailable. It means being able to feel strong emotions and still respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Ask yourself this: when this person is upset, do they address the situation or do they attack the person? That distinction tells you almost everything. A woman with strong emotional regulation can say, "I was hurt by what you said," without turning it into a 3-day conflict. She can feel frustrated without becoming cruel. That kind of emotional maturity creates safety in a relationship, and safety is the foundation of genuine intimacy. Trait 2. The second trait is genuine empathy, not performed empathy. Here's where most people get confused. Empathy has become a very popular word, but there's a significant difference between someone who performs empathy because it makes them look caring and someone who genuinely experiences and responds to the emotional states of others. Real empathy, what psychologists call affective empathy combined with cognitive empathy, involves two things. First, the ability to actually feel what another person is experiencing. Second, the cognitive ability to understand their perspective even when it differs from your own. But here's what most people get completely wrong about empathy in relationships. They only look for it when they themselves are hurting. The real test of empathy is whether someone shows it consistently for strangers, for people who can do nothing for them, in situations where there's no personal benefit. Pay attention to how a woman treats waitstaff, retail workers, or people going through difficulty in the news. These moments reveal genuine empathic capacity far more than how she treats you during the honeymoon phase of a relationship. Because during that phase, almost everyone is kind. It's easy to be generous when you're happy. The question is it part of her character or part of the performance? Dr. Brené Brown's research at the University of Houston has shown that empathy is the most powerful driver of human connection, and relationships built on genuine empathy, where both people feel truly seen and understood, show dramatically higher levels of resilience and long-term satisfaction. Trait 3, pattern interrupt. The third trait is personal accountability. And this is where things get really revealing. But here's what most people get completely wrong. They assume that a good person is someone who never makes mistakes. That's not what the research says at all. The research says that what separates psychologically healthy people isn't the absence of mistakes, it's how they respond to them. Personal accountability is the psychological capacity to own your actions, acknowledge when you've been wrong, and make genuine corrections without excessive self-flagellation, without deflection, and without making the other person responsible for your errors. Psychologists refer to the opposite of this as externalization of blame, a pattern in which a person consistently attributes negative outcomes to external factors, other people, or circumstances, rather than honestly examining their own role. Studies have linked high externalization with lower relationship quality, higher conflict rates, and significantly reduced capacity for personal growth. A woman who can say, "I was wrong, and here's what I'm going to do differently," without being prompted, without minimizing, and without needing reassurance that you still love her, is demonstrating one of the rarest and most valuable psychological traits a person can possess. That kind of honesty with oneself creates an environment where both people can grow, where mistakes become learning points rather than landmines. Pay attention to how she handles being wrong in low-stakes situations, because how someone behaves in small moments is almost always how they'll behave in large ones. Trait 4. The fourth trait is secure attachment style. Now, attachment theory might sound clinical, but it's one of the most practical frameworks in all of relationship psychology. Attachment styles, first identified by psychologist John Bowlby and expanded by Mary Ainsworth, refer to the way people relate to closeness, dependence, and emotional security in their relationships. And decades of research have shown that your attachment style follows you from childhood into every significant relationship you form as an adult. There are 3 primary styles. Anxious attachment involves a fear of abandonment, excessive need for reassurance, and difficulty tolerating space in a relationship. Avoidant attachment involves emotional distancing, discomfort with vulnerability, and a tendency to withdraw under stress. And then there's secure attachment, and this is what you're looking for. A securely attached person is comfortable with closeness and comfortable with independence. She doesn't need constant validation to feel worthy. She doesn't interpret your need for space as rejection. She can handle conflict without it feeling like the relationship is ending. She can be vulnerable without losing herself and supportive without losing her boundaries. According to data from the Minnesota Longitudinal Study of Risk and Adaptation, secure attachment in early life strongly predicts relationship competence, emotional resilience, and social functioning in adulthood. And the good news, because this is important, is that attachment styles are not fixed. Adults can develop what researchers call earned security through self-awareness, therapy, and consistent positive relational experiences. But when you're looking for a partner, ask yourself honestly, does being around this person feel safe? Does she make space for your needs? Does closeness come naturally without games, without punishment, without manipulation? That's security, and it's irreplaceable. Trait 5, the one most people overlook. And now, the 5th trait, the one most people completely overlook. The one I'd argue matters more than almost anything else. It's self-respect, not confidence, not ambition, self-respect. There's a critical distinction here that most people miss. Confidence is how a person presents themselves to the world. Self-respect is how a person treats themselves when no one is watching, and those two things are not always the same. A woman with genuine self-respect has internalized a sense of her own worth that isn't dependent on external validation, not on your approval, not on how others perceive her, not on achievements or appearance. That psychological foundation creates a particular kind of person. Someone who sets boundaries not out of fear, but out of self-knowledge. Someone who doesn't tolerate mistreatment, not because she's difficult, but because she understands her own value. Someone who chooses people and situations that reflect her standards, rather than accepting whatever she gets and hoping it improves. And here's why this matters for you directly. A person without self-respect will eventually allow or even enable dynamics that erode the relationship. Without self-respect, people either over-accept mistreatment or over-demand from others to fill an internal void. Neither pattern creates a healthy relationship. Dr. Kristin Neff, one of the leading researchers in self-compassion and psychological health at the University of Texas at Austin, has published extensive research showing that individuals with healthy self-regard, who treat themselves with the same compassion they'd show a close friend, demonstrate significantly better relationship outcomes, lower rates of depression and anxiety, and greater emotional stability across the lifespan. You can observe self-respect in small, everyday choices. Does she tolerate being spoken to dismissively? Does she make decisions based on what she actually wants, or based on what will keep everyone comfortable? Does she speak about herself with honesty and care, rather than constant self-criticism or performative self-promotion? A woman who respects herself will almost always respect you, not because you've earned it, but because respect is simply how she moves through the world. Myth busting. Before I wrap up, I want to address a few common misconceptions, because they come up constantly. The first is that a good woman is someone who is always agreeable. That's not goodness, that's conflict avoidance, and it often signals a lack of secure identity. Real goodness includes the capacity to disagree, to hold a position, to say no. Agreeableness without authenticity isn't a virtue, it's a performance. The second misconception is that these traits are things you can identify in the first few weeks of knowing someone. You can't, or at least not reliably. Many of the traits I've described, emotional regulation, accountability, secure attachment, only become visible under conditions of stress, conflict, or vulnerability. You need time and varied situations to see who someone actually is. Don't rush that process. And the third misconception is that a good woman is one who has no struggles or flaws. Again, not supported by the research. What matters isn't the absence of difficulty, it's the presence of self-awareness, the willingness to grow, and the consistency of character across different circumstances. Practical takeaways. So here's what I want you to take away from today. 1. Emotional regulation tells you how someone handles difficulty. Watch it in low-stakes moments before trusting it in high-stakes ones. 2. Genuine empathy shows itself in how someone treats people who can do nothing for them. 3. Personal accountability, especially in small situations, is one of the clearest indicators of psychological maturity. 4. Secure attachment creates the conditions for genuine intimacy without anxiety, games, or manipulation. 5. Self-respect is the foundation. Without it, none of the other traits can sustain. And here's a simple practice. Over the next few weeks, if you're in a relationship or evaluating one, create a kind of internal checklist, not a rigid scorecard, a framework for honest observation. Ask yourself, how does this person handle stress? How do they respond when they're wrong? Do they extend care to people outside of our relationship? Do they seem to have a stable, honest relationship with themselves? Character reveals itself gradually, consistently, in repeated small moments. Your job is simply to pay attention. The most important decision you will make about the quality of your life is not where you live or what career you choose. It's who you choose to be close to. Choose someone whose psychological character adds to your life, not someone whose deficits you're perpetually trying to manage. Take care of your relationships and take care of yourselves. This content is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical or psychological advice.